Hey everybody, it's Jamonster back again with Opus Gaming, and I'm here today to bring you our Purple Film Shanks deck profile. This deck is actually super cool. We've been testing this on the Discord. Link is actually down below. Join the Discord. It's been pretty fun testing on there, especially if you want to come hang out with some of the Opas. But this is a deck that we've been testing on the Discord. It's pretty cool and it's really fun, especially in the space of purple leaders. This leader does something really cool, and it's just kind of fun playing a more aggro style when you're picking up the purple cards. So anyway, let's dive straight into the purple Shanks leader here. His ability is activate main Dawn -3. You give all your film type characters plus 2k. Obviously, you're going to automatically think that that leans into a more aggressive playstyle, which is exactly what it does do. And the way we utilize this leader is what you want to do is set up cards on the board, chip out your opponent for damage, but you want to just swing with characters that you know that you can protect. You protect your characters to then build a wider board state, and then you utilize leader ability to make all your wider board a board of nothing but huge cards, and then all the swings that your opponent has to take are just much larger. So that's the game plan that we've kind of come up with after a lot of testing, and it's been working out really well. Film Shanks has just been honestly just like really fun, so I like having him in the middle right now. We'll just put him down here, keep an eye on him. All right, getting into kind of where we want to start off with some of that low-end aggro. And even at the top end of the game, the later part of the game, we have Baccarat there just for her stats. So 3 cost, really playable. You can play this on curve, or you can hold a couple of them and drop them later in the game as 2-ofs, because when your leader gives plus 2k to everything, you just drop 2 7ks for 3 cost each. So pretty crazy card in that sense. It has counter when you have to defend yourself, and if you're picking them up out of life. And I just really like Baccarat just because it's a value piece. And a lot of times when you're playing purple, you're playing the value tempo game, so it helps you get there, or she helps you get there. I love Baccarat. It's been pretty great. Moving on to the next most important part of the deck here. We have our ramp engine. So we don't have Onigashima Island for this deck, so we have to find a way to ramp in the early game to make sure that we drop the bigger cards, and then also make sure that we're staying on track with what our leader wants to do. So that's where these cards come in. Let's talk about Ain. Ain's ability is when you play her, you ramp 1 Dawn to rest mode. That's just fantastic. With when you can board this and then use it as an attacker afterwards and still get your ramp off, this leader just pops off. It feels like such a much more powerful leader than you have with most purple type leaders, because you're not just like focusing on controlling the board and popping what your opponent can do. Can be a very powerful attacker, because it can just shoot up to 7k, and you can board them really easy. If you have to play multiple of these to ramp multiple cards, you're chipping for 5k, protecting the Ain, and then you're also getting to a higher Dawn count, so you can just drop a bigger bomb. So it can be a lot for your opponent to counter. And then Ain also comes in when you're paying for these 2 cards, which are going to be Karina and Jack. Karina's ability we've talked about a little bit on the channel, but if you haven't seen the purple Kaido with the film deck stuff, check down below because we'll have a link for it. But Karina's ability is you can pitch a film type card to ramp 2 Dawn when you're at lower Dawn than your opponent. So when you're utilizing your bigger top end cards, this is how you're going to bounce back. But having dead Ains and things like that in your hand really make it a lot easier for you to be making those big bounce back plays. So using this as a way to just kind of pitch some of the weaker cards that you have throughout the game is really nice. Next up we have Jack, and Jack is going to be another card that we want to drop on curve. But this is a card that can drop those cards that you have that are dead in hand early, and you can just get some Dawn out of them. You drop the cards that you have early to kind of just like circle back and hopefully get a lot of those pieces back in your hand, and then drop them again in the late game. So utilizing the Jack is kind of a skill. You have to know what cards you can pitch and what cards you can't pitch, and then when to hold Jack in hand as just a counter. But it's a really good rebound piece, and having this kind of round out our ramping engine has been working really well, that at least from what we've seen on the Discord. So moving on to the next piece, we're just going to take a pause at our searcher, which is going to be 4 Buena Vista. Not too much to say here other than it's a 2k counter and it's a searcher, so it's really rough. I aim to play 1 to 2 at the max of these from hand, and then holding the rest that I can for counter. So if I see 4 of these in a hand, I'll start off, play 1 to start the game off, get my search and everything like that. But when I'm seeing them later in the game, I'm trying my best not to play them out and just use them for search to find other cards. Hopefully we're playing enough copies of the other cards to find them, and we do have a nice little draw engine that we'll circle back to in the later game. So Buena Vista is nice. It helps up our 2k counter number that we'll see later as well. But next up we have a really important part. We have 4 Uta and 2 An. An is much worse than Uta, no counter power, so a lot of times it can just get pitched in hand from a Karina or a Jack, or it gets boarded in the mid to late game when you want to build a wide board state. So you can board a Baccarat, board an An, and then tap 5 and play like a Guild, or tap 5 play a Queen. And what that does is if you don't sacrifice the An on the attacks next turn, you just Don -3 with your leader, and An becomes a 5k attacker. So An is actually pretty cool, but you just don't play high numbers of her because she just doesn't have counter, and that's a really big factor in what you can and cannot play in this deck. Going into Uta though, Uta is going to be your biggest point of defense. Uta is going to protect your other characters, so if you're swinging wide on a board state and you drop an Uta, Uta is going to protect your opponent from like chipping out your cards because you just rest down whatever their next big attacker is going to be. So it makes it harder, and it makes them have to consider where they're going to swing. If they want to push damage onto you that turn, and they think that they have 3 swings and they can go like character, and then swing at life, they can't do that anymore, because when they swing with a character, maybe you're able to rest down the other character. So Uta's ability of on block, Don -1, rest down one of your opponent's characters, cost 5 or less, is just really really useful. So sorry if I'm not going over some of these effects. I think I've gotten all of them, but if I'm not, they're just the film starter deck cards, so I feel like everybody kind of watching this probably know what they do. Next out we have 4 Queen. 4 Queen is really easy because Queen is a staple in any purple deck. I have to shuffle 2 of mine because I only got like 3 starter decks, 2 of my super pre-release and 2 of my after regular release. But Queen is just fantastic. Just try to play 4 of it whenever you can, because in the mid game, it just gets you so much resource. Like, you think that you're just drawing 2 and discarding 1 or whatever, but you're filtering out the cards in your hand that are dead. You're getting to your late game pieces a lot faster that you need to finish the game out, and then you're defending at 6k. So if your opponent swings 7k at your leader, now you can just block with 6, discard a 2k, and you're just out of the attack, and everything's over, right? So there's not too much to say about Queen that hasn't already been said, and he will probably be in the game for a long time to come. Next up, we have a really simple part of the deck, just the 2k counters. Forgive me for the mismatch. I think that I was sorting through a box that just didn't have the rest of my proper 2k counters. I think the proper 2k lineup for this deck is 4 X-Drake, 4 Sasaki, Ramper, and then the discard guy, but it really doesn't matter because you don't want to play your 2ks in this version of the deck. You have so much defense that you need to do from hand that playing your Buena Vistas already are forcing you to keep all the rest of this in hand anyway. So that's the way that you want to play this version of purple deck. I know that sometimes you can get away with it, especially in Kaido, but you really just can't afford it in Shanks. I think that's the biggest difference between the two. So we'll just put it like this. You can play any 2k counters you want there, but I think that the X-Drake and the Sasaki are just more optimal. Next up, we have Gil Tesoro. This is going to be one of our biggest points of the deck. This is one of the main reasons we're playing this deck, this leader. His ability is Don -2, draw 2 cards. There's no discard. There's no downside, really. It's just Don -2, which is kind of hard to get because we do have consistent ramp in the deck, but it's not free like Onigashima. It's not a one-time investment like that, and that's the difference with how you utilize Guild. In this deck, you do want to drop this on curve when you can, but only when you can afford to not attack the very next turn. If you're winning the resource battle because of something that you dropped on 3 Don or even on 1 Don, or you're just swinging out at your opponent's characters and they can't do very much for the time being, dropping the Guild on curve is fine, but you have to be careful with that. You can't really drop it in a situation where he'll just get removed because you have to give him a turn to breathe. When I really like to drop the Guild is post dropping my bomb. So if I drop a 8-drop Kaido, I like to drop Guild after that. If I drop an 8-drop Bullet, I like to drop a Guild after that. And then it's once I'm on 10 Don -2 after I've done other things is really easy to utilize. And then if I have to do a big Don minus on top of the Don -2, that's really easy to bounce back with because I have the Karina get me 2 of them back. I can hard play any of my other rampers and just get it back there, but you have to really manage your Don properly, and you really have to manage this card. I think that this card is fantastic though because it really balances the offense and the defense. It's got the offensive stat line that's nice, having that 6k power because you can just attach 1 Don, it becomes a 7k. But with leader effect, you can just push them up to 8k naturally, 9k with one Don, and that's a very strong attacker to have, especially when you have two other 3k or two other 3-cost cards that are up to 7k when you're doing your leader effect. So this card's really, really deadly, and it can really, really flip the late game on its head because you're pushing damage with it, but then you're getting cards to be able to counter out what your opponent's doing after that. So I think it's a really interesting card. The reason that we're playing 3 of it, I guess we should address that, is just because you don't want to clog it, even though you have the jacks and things like that to out it and to get it out of your hand. You just really wanna drop 2 of them. So playing 3 of it is kind of the perfect number, and you really want to play perfect numbers and not oversaturate in any way. At least that's what I like to say. Going into our top end, we have 2 Kaido and 2 Douglas Bullet, and it's the 8-drop Kaido. Talking about the Douglas Bullet first, just because this fits perfectly, obviously, into the deck list, he's going to get that 2k boost from your leader when you when you pop off, and you can just make this just a crazy turn. You can push your opponent for 12k, dealing 2 damage to your opponent, and then push your opponent for 9, or push your opponent for 7. After that, 7 again, and then something like 9. And these board states are just really, really, really easy to set up. Douglas Bullet is just really the perfect finisher. Resting down 2 6-cost or less cards makes it an absolute terror against green and an absolute terror against red. Obviously, anything that combines the 2 colors as well. So you can push damage onto your opponent that your opponent just can't really defend against, or it's really hard to defend against, and just eat your opponent's resources. Then we have the 2 8-drop Kaido. This is going to be our ramping engine, as well as it's like our insurance policy. We play this before we go into our really crazy Don minus cards, because when we have this Kaido, it just kind of softens the blow. If we have this Kaido when we drop our 8-drop Bullet and our 5-drop Gil Tesoro, then we're in a lot better position when we're doing something like a Don minus like 7 or a Don minus 8 turn, because we get 1 Don back right away from Kaido, and then we fall back and rely on our character card rampers. So 8-drop Kaido is really good. Thinking about upping this to 3, just to drop it more consistently, and then also trying dropping 2 of these. But for now, we're just playing it at 2, and I do like it here. This deck, you'll notice it doesn't play a crazy bomb engine, because that's just not what the deck is about. You're not dropping crazy bombs. You're creating bombs out of the cards that you have on board already. So last card that we have here is Union Armada, and we're playing 4 of it. Normally you don't have to play these defensive cards at 4. You can, just for consistency purposes, but like usually you only resolve 1 to 2 of them per game, just because leaving the Don open is kind of hard. But the way that we use it in this deck is that we want to set up our early game cards, like we're talking about with the Baccarat or the Ain and things like that, and then attacking with them in the early game, and then utilizing this to protect it throughout the entire turn. So what this does is it will protect, or it'll boost a film leader by 4k, or it'll boost a film character by 4k. And if you did boost a film character by 4k, the film character cannot be KO'd for the rest of the turn. That's just really, really powerful. Your opponent can't KO it with a 9-drop Kaido. They can't KO it with a demon face or anything like that. They can't attack into it. It just doesn't matter. So in the early and mid game, if you have a rested character and your opponent has, let's say you have like 1 or 2 rested characters, and your opponent has 3 attacks on their side of the board, and they're thinking that they can swing 2 times into 1 character to burn resources, and then 1 time into leader, and you're in a position where you can take that leader swing. You'll take the leader swing from your opponent's character card, right? You'll tap 2, play out Union Armada. You can boost the character card by the 4k, and then they can't attack into it for the rest of the turn. So they either have to continue giving you cards that they don't necessarily want to, or you just defend out from hand if you can't take the damage. So using Union Armada can be kind of like tricky. I like to burn 2 of them in the early game to just make sure I protect my character cards, and then save 2 of them for the late game. But protecting your character cards just mean that you can go into a wider board state. So if you're protecting something like an Uta or something like a Baccarat, you're gaining so much field on your opponent, so much board on your opponent. So it's just a really powerful card. So the deck has been really, really fun. I definitely do want to make a few more tweaks. I'm not exactly sure, even looking at it kind of fully profiled out like this, I'm not exactly sure where I want to put everything and kind of how I want to do everything, but I have been enjoying the deck a lot. I think that the places that it struggles mostly is on the defensive aspect of it, but I think that's because a lot of my testing has just not been testing it, playing it aggressive. when I have been testing it aggressive, the defense has been just like working. It's fine enough. You might grind the game down to 1 or 0 life, but you are pushing out and finishing games a lot cleaner. So I like going the go wide strategy and the protect your character cards when you can, take life when you can, and then just set yourself up for huge Douglas bullet plays where if they're on 2 life, they're for sure taking the Douglas bullet, but then they have to field off the leader at 8k, and then I want them to field off 2 7ks and then kind of finish it off with a 9k. Plays like that and attack patterns like that are very, very clean and just very, very easy to achieve with this deck if you kind of look at it in that aspect. So this is just something I've been testing, something I wanted to bring to the channel because in the last video I said if somebody commented about it, I do it, and somebody did. So I'm definitely doing it for you guys. I really appreciate that. But if you've made it this far into the deck profile, drop a like, drop a sub, drop a comment. I really appreciate it, and especially with the comments. I'm not like other YouTubers. I will comment back. I really like talking to you guys. I won't ignore comments and things like that, and I don't let them stack up. I try to get back to all my comments, so I really appreciate you guys showing so much support. But this is going to be Jamonster with Opus Gaming. Take care.